My dear brothers and sisters in the risen Lord, week 6th, ordinary time, day Monday. Ipse Dixit. Pythagoras, who lived 540 years before Jesus, was a great mathematician and philosopher. At Crotona in Italy, he collected a large number of disciples around him. The inhabitants were notorious for luxury and licentiousness, but the good effects of his influence were soon visible. Sobriety and temperance succeeded. 600 of the individuals became his disciples and enrolled themselves in a society to aid each other in the pursuit of wisdom, uniting their property into one common stock for the benefit of the whole. They were required to practice the greatest purity and simplicity of manners. The first lesson they learned was silence. For a time they were required to be only hearers. He, Pythagoras, said no, ipse dixit, was to be held by them as sufficient without any proof. It was only the advanced peoples, after years of patient submission, who were allowed to ask questions and state objections. In today's gospel, the Pharisees, to strengthen their unbelief further and at the same time to discredit Jesus, had demanded a sign. They did not believe in his words. They wanted more and more proofs. All Christians must just believe because if say dixit, Jesus said no. Let us note 1. Pharisees' evil design. While the multitude came to benefit from Jesus, the Pharisees came to do mischief to him. They came not to question him and thus to learn from him, but to question and entrap him. Wicked men, like their fathers Satan, utilize God-given powers and gifts to obstruct even God's purposes. These Pharisees use their time, energy, and resources to discredit and demean Jesus, who was doing his Father's will and work on this earth. 2. The disbelief of the Pharisees. From the beginning, the Pharisees looked upon Jesus with suspicion. They had seen enough of signs and miracles performed by Jesus, but they refused to believe in him. They asked Jesus for a sign, not to believe in him, but to strengthen their unbelief. They wanted to see the spectacular signs which accompanied Moses, who went up in the sight of all Israel on the mount which burned. They expected Jesus to repeat the spectacular miracles which prophet Elijah performed when he called fire from heaven to burn his sacrifices, and also upon the two captains and their band of 50. 2 Kings chapter 1 verse 1 to 14. They expected such miracles and signs from Jesus to authenticate his claims. They asked for a sign after Jesus had performed the sign of feeding 4,000 people in the wilderness with just 7 loaves and a few fish. They asked for a sign, not to believe, but to do mischief. Without any of the spectacular signs from Jesus, the Jews had enough signs to judge the arrival of the Messiah. They had signs enough for the advent of the Messiah in the prophecies of old, in the course of history, or in the signs of the times, which were all replete with the messianic promises. But they deliberately blinded themselves. Faith requires no sign to believe, but it shall be followed with a sign and miracles. The Lord, who refused to grant any signs to the unbelieving Pharisees, had granted empty numbers of signs to his believing disciples, including the great signs of his resurrection and his ascension. May God bless you all. Amen.